The waitress Judith felt very concerned when a family with 2 children ordered only one children's meal at the restaurant. She decided to keep an eye on them and noticed that the little girl wasn't eating anything and the rest of the family wasn't even talking to her. She shows him a sign asking, "Do you need help?" She quickly gets the confirmation she needed. This little girl needed help and she needed it now. Judith was ready for action now that she had finally been able to communicate with the little girl. So when the family stood up and grabbed the little girl by the hand, Judith was more than ready to get in their way with some tough questions. As they exited the restaurant, Judith and a few other diners stopped the family from leaving and confronted them with what they had discovered. The father turned red as a cherry, then looked at his daughter. "That's not what it looks like." Before we start, can we get this video to 1,000 likes? Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. The father started frantically explaining why he hadn't bought a meal for his daughter, and when he was done, Judith could hardly believe it. But what reason had the father given? Something wrong with the little girl? Or was something else going on? It was the Saturday dinner rush, so the restaurant was packed with guests. Judith made sure the family was seated at their table and then rushed over to take orders from the other diners who had already been seated with drinks. Judith passed the family several times on her way before returning to take their food order. When the family finished ordering, Judith realized that they had only ordered 3 meals. Since there were 2 parents and 2 children, it didn't match. There was no second meal on the children's menu or even a side dish to accompany the starters. Judith's brain started working on overdrive. What was happening? There was nothing extraordinary. The children seemed well-behaved and polite. But after years of seeing different families, Judith had seen parents deny children food as punishment. But there was a big difference between not buying restaurant food for a misbehaving child and not giving them food at all. She decided to figure out what was going on. Judith tested different angles and figured out the best ways to keep an eye on the family without them noticing. She could stand in the waitress area in the back or hover at the side of the bar. Both places seemed natural. After a few minutes of observing the family, Judith was able to draw some conclusions. Everyone at the table was lively and talking except the little girl. The parents and their son were talking to each other, but the girl sat quietly. She didn't even react when the others laughed or told a story. At one point, the little girl acted like she was going to get up from the table. Maybe she needed to go to the bathroom. Or, if she was in danger, the girl might have tried to get help. But as soon as she moved, her father clung to her hand and wouldn't allow her to move. Judith nearly intervened, but then noticed that the family's food was over. Judith collected the family's food and brought it to the table. She set the main dishes in front of the parents, then held up the children's meal. Judith was sure the family hadn't noticed her watching them, so she pretended to be confused about the missing meal. She asked which child had ordered the meal and moved closer to the little girl to give her a chance to reach out if she wanted to. When the parents responded, Judith was not at all surprised. Without thinking, the father replied that the meal was for his son. The whole family seemed to freeze when they heard Judith's question. The young girl was particularly interested in what Judith was asking and fixed her with a look that the waitress didn't quite understand. The girl's father responded somewhat nervously that his daughter was not hungry. Judith didn't know what to believe. Judith immediately noticed that the parents acted differently towards her. Time is running out for Judith to understand what is happening with the little girl. Judith continued to study the family between the plates running to other tables. Parents and son were all eating, but the little girl didn't touch anything. None of them offered to share or give her a bite of their meal. The girl looked so sad that it broke Judith's heart. Someone had to do something. She really needed to talk to the girl alone before the family left the restaurant. Judith had a feeling something was wrong. She then grabbed a pen and paper and wrote a message. It said, "Do you need help?" The girl looked in Judith's direction and nodded without her father noticing. Judith wrote, "Okay," to let the girl know she would help. Now Judith had to come up with a plan to get to the girl alone. The easiest thing would be for Judith to talk to him in the bathroom. It was the only place she could talk to the kid without anyone interfering. Judith had an idea, but it required the help of some of her colleagues. Judith informed her closest colleagues that something was going on in the family, One of them even agreed that she also noticed it. Judith hatched a plan to let her colleague accidentally spill soda on the father and daughter. It had to keep them away from the table. They prepared the order immediately to make sure the plan would work. Then it started. Drinks were carefully spilled. The father got angry. The father shouted that he would call the police if she did not come out. Judith knew she would be in trouble if she kept Anna here. She opened the door reluctantly. She looked straight into the father's eyes. He looked angry. He grabbed his daughter's hand and walked back to their table. Judith mustered up the courage to face the father. She had no idea of his reaction. Then Judith approached the table. The father asked her if she had come to apologize. Judith told him she had different plans, and then he laughed. He wasn't afraid of a little waitress. He told her to be careful with her next steps. Judith told him to shut up and let her talk. Judith told him to tell the truth about the situation with his daughter. She spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. There was a big smile on his face. He told Judith not to worry anymore. Everything would be fine. Then stranger things started to happen. Then the mother started to applaud as well as the rest of the restaurant. Judith was totally in shock. What was going on here? Then her boss stood up to Judith, thanked her for doing the right thing. Judith demanded an explanation. Then, out of nowhere, a film crew arrived. Judith was absolutely amazed. She didn't know how to react. Then Anna approached Judith to give her a hug. Judith could only look at everyone around her. Then Anna said, "You are a good person, Judith." Judith demanded an explanation. Apparently, Judith's boss and best friend had dumped her for a hidden camera program to let the world know what a great person Judith was. Everyone present today was in the whole event. Judith didn't know what to say. She felt like it was all completely surreal. Judith became emotional and thanked everyone. Everything came out of a sudden. She had had a difficult year. It felt good that his good deeds were finally recognized. She didn't care about the exposure on television, but about the gesture of everyone around her. The film crew thanked her for being a good sport about it. Judith didn't seem upset at having been cheated on. It showed his good side. She finally watched the episode at home with Anna and the family. They could all laugh about it.